Nearly 1,000 years of kings, tragedy that changed a succession overnight, and a family tree so tangled it connects Sweden to nearly every throne in Europe. This is the Swedish royal family, the House of Bernadotte, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how every single member fits together. Let's go back in time, way back. Sweden has had kings for over 1,000 years. But here's something surprising. The family sitting on the throne today has only been there since the early 1800s, and the story of how they got there sounds more like a movie script than real history. Let's set the scene. The year is 1810. Sweden has a king, Carl XIII. But there's a big problem. The king is old, he is sick, and worst of all, he has no children, no son to take over after him. No daughter either. This is a huge crisis for any country. Who will rule next? Who will keep the kingdom safe? Now, normally, when a king has no heir, the throne passes to another close relative. That's how most royal families work. But Sweden did something nobody expected, something almost nobody had ever done before. They looked outside their own country, outside their own royal bloodline, and they picked a total stranger. His name was Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte. He wasn't Swedish. He wasn't even royal. He was French. And not just any Frenchman, he was one of Napoleon Bonaparte's top generals, a Marshal of France, a soldier who had fought in some of the biggest battles in European history. So why on earth would Sweden choose a French army general to be their future king? Well, there are a few reasons. Bernadotte had a good reputation. He was known to be fair to prisoners of war, and some Swedish soldiers had good things to say about him after meeting him on the battlefield. Sweden also hoped that picking a man connected to Napoleon, who was the most powerful leader in Europe at the time, might protect them politically. It was a smart, strategic move, not just a random pick. So in 1810, the Swedish parliament made their decision. They invited Bernadotte to come to Sweden and become their crown prince. That means he wasn't king yet, but he was next in line. Bernadotte said yes. He packed up his life in France, moved to a country where he didn't even speak the language, and started preparing to rule a kingdom that wasn't his by birth. For 8 years, he worked closely with the aging king, learning the country, leading the government, even leading Swedish armies. Then, in 1818, the old king finally passed away, and Bernadotte, the French general, officially became King of Sweden. He took a brand new royal name. From that day on, he was known as King Carl XIV Johan. And here's the amazing part. Every single Swedish monarch since 1818, every king, right up to today, is a direct descendant of this one French soldier. His bloodline never broke. It just kept going, generation after generation, for over 200 years. That is why, even today, the royal family of Sweden is officially called the House of Bernadotte, named after him, the outsider who became a king. And here's one more fact worth remembering. Out of all the royal families that have ever ruled Sweden throughout its 1,000-year history, the House of Bernadotte has lasted the longest of them all, longer than any family before it. So next time you see a photo of the Swedish king or queen, remember this. Their whole story, their whole royal line began with a French general who took a leap into the unknown, moved to a foreign land, and built a dynasty that still rules to this day. That's how the House of Bernadotte began. Now let's meet the man sitting on the Swedish throne today. His name is King Carl XVI Gustaf. And just like the story we told you before, his path to becoming king is filled with tragedy, surprise, and one very unusual family jump. King Carl Gustaf was born on the 30th of April, 1946. At the time, nobody expected him to become king anytime soon. His grandfather was king. His father was in line to be king after that, and baby Carl was just a baby. Third in line, with no rush at all. But then, tragedy struck. When Carl was less than 1 year old, his father, Prince Gustav Adolf, was killed in a plane crash. Just like that, the little baby lost his father. He would never even remember him. This changed everything for young Carl. Normally, when a father dies before becoming king, The crown simply skips over to the next generation smoothly. But in this case, something bigger happened. A few years later, Carl's great-grandfather, the reigning king at the time, also passed away. Now think about this for a second. Carl's father was gone, so there was nobody standing between little Carl and the throne. At just 4 years old, this small child suddenly became the crown prince of Sweden. 4 years old. Most children that age are just learning to tie their shoes. Carl was being trained to one day rule an entire country. For the next 23 years, young Carl grew up knowing that one day, the crown would be his. He went to school, he served in the military, he studied at university, he was groomed, step by step, for the day he would become king. That day finally came in 1973. Carl's grandfather, King Gustaf VI Adolf, passed away, and Carl officially became King Carl XVI Gustaf of Sweden. But here's a twist that surprises a lot of people. Just as Carl was stepping onto the throne, Sweden was going through huge political changes. The government passed new laws that took away almost all the real power from the king. No more making political decisions, no more running the country directly. From that point on, the King of Sweden would mostly attend ceremonies, cut ribbons, meet foreign leaders, and represent the nation, but he would not actually govern it. That job now belonged fully to Sweden's elected government. So King Carl Gustaf became one of the first in a brand new kind of monarchy. A king with a crown, but very little real political power. Purely ceremonial, and that is still exactly how the Swedish monarchy works today, more than 50 years later. Now let's bring things up to today, in 2026. This year has actually been a very special one for King Carl Gustaf. In April, he celebrated his 80th birthday. Think about that, 80 years old. And more than 50 of those years spent as king. That makes him one of the longest reigning monarchs in the world today, and 2026 holds one more milestone. This year also marks 50 years since King Carl Gustaf married his queen. 50 years of marriage, half a century, side by side, through decades of change, family milestones, and public duty. So who is this queen who has stood beside him for 50 years? That's exactly where we're headed next. Every great king needs a great queen standing beside him. And Sweden's queen has quite the story of her own. Her name is Sylvia. But here's something interesting right away. She wasn't born a princess. She wasn't born into royalty at all. Her full birth name was Sylvia Sommerlath, and she was born in Germany. Her father was German. Her mother was Brazilian. So Sylvia actually grew up with a mixed background, spending part of her childhood in Brazil before her family moved back to Germany. She was, in every sense of the word, a regular young woman. No palace, no crown, no royal title waiting for her. So how did a regular German woman end up becoming the Queen of Sweden? It all comes down to one event. The 1972 Summer Olympics held in Munich, Germany. Sylvia was working at those Olympic Games. Her job was to help important guests. She worked as a hostess, guiding and assisting official visitors during the events. And one of the people she crossed paths with during those Olympics was a young man named Carl Gustaf. At the time, he was Sweden's crown prince, not yet king, but next in line for the throne. The two of them met, and something clicked. They began seeing each other, quietly at first, getting to know one another away from the public eye. Over the following years, their relationship grew stronger, even as Carl Gustaf prepared to take on the huge responsibility of becoming king. Then, in 1976, just 3 years after Carl officially became king, the couple got married. It was a massive, beautiful royal wedding in Stockholm, watched by people across Sweden and around the world. A German hostess from the Munich Olympics had officially become the Queen of Sweden. Now let's fast forward all the way to today, to the year 2026. This year is an extra special one for the King and Queen, because it marks exactly 50 years since that wedding day. 50 years of marriage. That's called a golden wedding anniversary, and it's a huge milestone that very few couples, royal or not, ever get to celebrate together. Think about everything this couple has lived through together in 50 years. They've raised a family, They've represented their country all over the world. They've faced public attention, family changes, and decades of duty, all side by side. 50 years is not just a number. It's a lifetime of partnership. And speaking of raising a family, this is where the modern Swedish royal family really begins to take shape. King Carl Gustaf and Queen Silvia had 3 children together, and here's the important part to remember. Almost every single member of today's royal family that you hear about, the princes, the princesses, the grandchildren, all of them trace directly back to this one marriage. This is the trunk of the family tree. Everything else we're going to talk about branches out from here. Queen Silvia has also become well known and respected for her charity work over the years, especially her efforts to help children. She has used her position as queen to support causes that protect and support young people, both in Sweden and internationally. It's work she has continued for decades, and it's a big part of how the public sees her today, not just as a queen, but as someone who genuinely cares about using her platform for good. So, now we have our king and our queen. 50 years married, 3 children between them. A family that started with a chance meeting at the Olympics and grew into the royal house that leads Sweden today. Next, let's meet those 3 children, because each one of them has a very different story, and one of them is going to make history. King Carl Gustaf and Queen Silvia had 3 children together, and each one of them grew up to live a very different kind of life. Let's meet them one by one, starting with the oldest. Her name is Crown Princess Victoria, and she was born on the 14th of July 1977. As the firstborn child, you might think she was always destined to become queen one day. But actually, her path to the throne had a strange twist right from the very beginning. You see, back when Victoria was born, Sweden still followed an old rule. This rule said that if a king had both a son and a daughter, the son would always come first in line for the throne, no matter which child was born earlier. So when Victoria's younger brother was born 2 years later, he actually jumped ahead of her, in line to become king one day. Victoria, the firstborn, was pushed down to second place, just because she was a girl. But then, something huge happened. In 1980, Sweden's government made a bold decision. They rewrote the law completely. From that point on, it wouldn't matter if a child was a boy or a girl, whoever was born first would be first in line for the throne. And this new rule was applied backward too, which meant Victoria was instantly restored to her rightful place as first in line. This is a really big deal. When Victoria eventually becomes queen, she will be the very first woman to rule Sweden in over 300 years. The last time a woman sat on the Swedish throne on her own was back in 1720. That is how historic this moment will be. Victoria is married to Prince Daniel, and his story is pretty remarkable too. Before becoming a prince, Daniel wasn't royal at all. He actually worked as a personal trainer. He was Victoria's gym instructor before their relationship began. From personal trainer to prince, quite a journey. Together, they've spent years preparing for the future. In fact, in 2024, Victoria began special military officer training, a serious program designed to prepare her fully for her future role as Sweden's head of state. She isn't just waiting for the crown. She's actively getting ready for it. Next comes the middle child, Prince Carl Philip, born the 13th of May 1979. He's married to Princess Sofia. Before joining the royal family, Sofia had a very different kind of public life. She had appeared on reality television and worked as a glamour model. That's about as far from royal tradition as you can get. But since marrying into the family, Sofia has completely reshaped how the public sees her. She has focused much of her royal work on charity, especially raising awareness around mental health, a cause she speaks about often and personally cares about. And finally, the youngest child, Princess Madeleine, born the 10th of June 1982. Madeleine took perhaps the most unusual path of the 3. She's married to Christopher O'Neill, a financier with both British and American roots. And rather than staying close to the Swedish palace, Madeleine and her husband chose to build much of their life outside Sweden altogether, splitting their time between the United States and Europe. She still takes part in royal duties, but her day-to-day life looks very different from her older siblings. So there you have it. 3 children, 3 very different paths. one preparing to make history as Sweden's next queen, one using her royal platform to champion mental health, and one who chose a quieter, more international life far from the palace walls. But the story doesn't end with these three. Because between them, they've had children of their own, and that next generation comes with its own surprising twist. We'll get into that next. Now we come to one of the most surprising moments in the whole story of the modern Swedish royal family. This is the part where the family tree got trimmed, right in front of everyone, by the king himself. Let's set the scene. By the year 2019, King Carl Gustaf and Queen Sylvia had 7 grandchildren, 7 young royals, all carrying royal titles, all officially part of what's called the royal house. That name matters, because being part of the royal house isn't just an honor. It also comes with real responsibilities, public duties, official appearances, and real money, paid for by Swedish taxpayers. But then, King Carl Gustaf made a decision that shocked a lot of people. He announced that most of his grandchildren would be removed from the royal house. Just like that. Let that sink in for a moment. These were his own grandchildren. Children he had watched grow up, and he was choosing, on purpose, to step them outside the official royal circle. So who was left in? Only 2 branches of the family kept their full royal status. Crown Princess Victoria's children stayed in completely, and from Prince Carl Philip's children, only the eldest son kept his place. Everyone else, several young grandchildren, kept their titles as dukes and duchesses, which sounds nice, but they lost something much bigger. They lost their official Royal Highness status, and they lost their government-funded allowance, meaning taxpayers would no longer be paying for their royal lifestyle. So why would a grandfather do this to his own grandchildren? The king actually explained his reasoning clearly. He wanted to shrink the size of the working royal family. A smaller, leaner monarchy, fewer royals living off public money. It was, in his own words, a modern move to keep the monarchy efficient and affordable for the country. Even so, it's still a decision that people in Sweden argue about to this day. Some praise it as responsible. Others feel it was unfair to children who never asked to be born into this situation. Now let's look at exactly who remains in line for the throne today, because this is the real, official order. Number 1 is Crown Princess Victoria herself, still first in line, just as we discussed earlier. Number 2 is her daughter, Princess Estelle, born in 2012. One day, little Estelle could grow up to become queen herself. Number 3 is Estelle's younger brother, Prince Oscar, born in 2016. Number 4 is Prince Carl Philip, the king's second child. And number 5 is Carl Philip's eldest son, Prince Alexander, the only one of his children who kept his full royal status. That's the entire working line of succession. Just 5 people, carefully selected, carrying the future of the Swedish crown forward. It's a powerful reminder that royal families today aren't stuck entirely in old traditions. Even something as old and formal as a 1,000-year-old monarchy can still make bold, modern changes when it needs to. And in Sweden's case, one grandfather's decision reshaped his own family tree, right before the world's eyes. Next, let's step outside this immediate circle and meet the wider family, the aunts, uncles, and cousins who make this royal story even bigger. Now, you might think King Carl Gustaf was an only child. He wasn't. He actually had 4 older sisters, and their story reveals something pretty unfair about how royal families used to work. Remember that old rule we mentioned earlier? Sons always came before daughters in line for the throne, no matter who was born first. This is exactly where that rule caused real heartbreak. All 4 of Carl Gustaf's sisters were older than him. By normal logic, one of them should have become queen. But because they were women, every single one of them was passed over. Their younger brother, born last, jumped straight to the front simply because he was male. There was another tough rule, too. Back then, if a princess married someone who wasn't royal, a commoner, she lost her royal title completely. Several of Carl Gustaf's sisters fell in love, married commoners, and lost their royal status as a result. Hard to imagine today, but that's how it worked back then. One of these sisters was Princess Désirée, born in 1938. Like her sisters, she lost her title after marrying a nobleman outside the royal family. Even so, she stayed close to the family, often appearing at big royal events. Sadly, Princess Désirée passed away in January of 2026, at the age of 87. Her passing is a good reminder this family tree isn't just old history, it's a living family, still growing and still losing members, even today. Now, let's zoom out even further, because these royal connections stretch far beyond Sweden. Here's a fact that surprises a lot of people. The Swedish royals are actually connected to the British royal family, not through a recent marriage, but through history, all the way back to Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom. Because of that shared ancestry, King Carl Gustaf and the late Queen Elizabeth II were actually family first cousins twice removed. Two different countries, two different thrones, but the same bloodline. And it doesn't stop there. King Carl Gustaf is also a first cousin of Denmark's former queen, Margrethe II. They share a grandfather, King Gustaf VI Adolf of Sweden. So step back and look at the bigger picture. The Swedish royal family isn't just its own isolated story. It's woven into royal history across Britain, Denmark, and beyond. One giant family tree, spread across an entire continent. Next, let's bring it all together and wrap up this incredible journey from a French general to the royals ruling Sweden today. That's the full picture. A French marshal's bloodline, a tragic plane crash that reshaped the succession, a rewritten law that made history for women, and a modern king who trimmed his own family tree to keep the monarchy lean. It's one of the most fascinating royal families in Europe, and one that's still being written today. If you enjoyed this breakdown, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.